we need to have more trauma treatment in our society, psychological treatment done by qualified devotees for devotees who have PTSD, who've been abused, and not just giving this crap to them, coming in and saying, Prabhu, this is your karma and you have to tolerate it and things, it's more violence. And it's so very wrong.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Free Radical podcast. Today, I had the joy of talking with a dear friend, Vaishnava scholar, Madhavananda Prabhu. Madhavananda is an author, researcher, and speaker on Gaudiya Vaishnavism, serving as the director of Gaudiya Research Association in Puri, which is the Puri branch of the Bhaktivedanta Research Center, and the managing editor of ISKCON Gopalji Publications. He specializes in researching, preserving, translating, and publishing rare Gaudiya Vaishnava texts in Odia and Bengali, and exploring ancient temples and sacred places in Odisha and Jagannath Puri. A disciple of Sri Srimad Gaur Govinda Swami, Madhavananda has been based in Odia and Jagannath Puri since 1993, conducting retreats, pilgrimage, and research on traditional Gaudiya Vaishnava tradition from Odisha. He is the founder and editor of Sri Krishna Katamrita magazine and its email publication, Sri Krishna Katamrita Bindu. He has authored and edited numerous articles and books, including When Good Fortune Arises, a biography of Gaur Govinda Maharaj, and research essays on diverse devotional topics. Today we had a very moving, deep, dynamic conversation with Madhavananda Prabhu, mostly centered around the topic of Guru Tattva, the role of Guru, the different facets of this endless, multifaceted jewel, as well as the role of institutions, which is quietly connected many times to the role, position, and influence of the Guru, and what's the current condition of the Gaudiya Vaishnava Sampradaya, our current understanding, our current needs in connection with these two main themes. So I invite all of you to continue diving deep into this particular episode. This is the Free Radical podcast, and to support it, please subscribe to our channel by clicking on the bell. And if you feel nourished and inspired by the conversation, like it, share it, drop any comments you may like to continue this dialogue as it is ongoing. So without further ado, dear friends, brothers and sisters, here is Madhavananda Prabhu. Welcome, Madhavananda Prabhu. Thank you so much for joining us in the Free Radical podcast, and my pleasure to be in conversation with you again after, last time we met, and probably the first time we met in Jagannath Puri a few years ago. I still recall having a very nice night spent there at your place, and we had a lecture on, still remember the third verse of Shikshastakam, and still I remember a quote that I shared by Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur that you liked a lot, that he will say something like, humility is that which is absent when there is an enjoying spirit. Just to remind that important concept. So anyhow, you are someone who talks on so many topics, and we can go in so many directions. I even recently remember listening some interesting conversation you had with Jai Jagannath and on Vedic pornography, as unusual as that may sound. But today I like to go and focus our conversation on topics connected like Guru Tattva, institutions, and some other related topics. And to begin with, in this connection, I would like to ask you how, in your journey into Gaudiya Vaishnavism, how you were eventually convinced about the need to accept the Guru. And then what was the thing that touched your heart the most in relation to Srila Gaur Govinda Maharaj that inspired you to accept him as your spiritual master?
Well, I would say that I accepted Guru twice. I have to say, historically. First time I was initiated by the Zonal Acharya, and I accepted him because that's what everybody said we should do.
Yeah.
And we were encouraged in that way, and that was my motivation. But then after he had some difficulties, God bless him, and he left the path of bhakti for some time.
Hmm.
It really broke my heart. I continued with my practice, and for 7 years, I when people would ask me about guru, I would say, yeah, if I find someone like Raghunath Das Goswami, it's something I may accept.
Mm-hmm.
And then Krishna gave me a big kick, or as my Guru Maharaj would say, Lord Nityananda gave me a big kick, like he did to Shivananda Sain on one occasion.
Mm-hmm.
And things really crashed in my personal life in a very, very heavy way. It's very personal. I was completely crushed. I went back to Los Angeles where I joined. I started going out to the airport to sell books every day because I just didn't want to listen to my mind. I had a lot of deep personal problems then.
Hmm.
And I was going to Srila Prabhupada, our Srila Prabhupada, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada's rooms in LA every day. And I
Hmm.
would chant japa there by myself. And I was crying buckets of tears and
Hmm.
praying to Prabhupada that I realized I need a guru, but I need someone like you.
Mm-hmm.
And it wasn't long after that, and there's so many little stories leading up to it, but it wasn't long after that that I met my Guru Maharaj. And at that time, based on my previous bad experience, I thought to myself, well, I didn't follow the tradition. I didn't follow Shastra before. I accepted Guru rather quickly after just 6 months. But this time I'm going to wait a few years and I'm going to examine him and watch him and see if there's a real relationship and if I really have faith. I started traveling with him, and after a couple of weeks, I remembered another verse from Hari Bhakti Vilas where Sanatana Goswami comments that one should examine the guru. It should be a mutual examination between the guru and the disciple for a few years. But if
Mm-hmm.
one finds someone that they're convinced is a Mahabhagavat, then they can
Mm-hmm.
immediately take. And so after 2 weeks, I asked my Guru Maharaj for initiation. And I'm very glad that I did.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that detail of the story. I was not aware about the first part of the journey and your crying buckets of tears, which for me, well, nonetheless, without getting personal into my own story either, but it's a good important reminders the importance of reaching the point of crying for mercy for further
My,
clarity in the journey.
my Guru Maharaj called that Atma Krandana, or the
Mm,
crying of the soul. And we can
mhm,
have, to use a fancy English word, an ecclesiastical relationship, a kind of institutional, formal relationship with Guru, which is what I more or less had in the beginning.
mm,
But until we come to the point of really crying and hankering into our heart, just like if you make a building, three basic elements are required. You have to have cement, you have to have sand. The cement is like Guru. The sand
mhm.
is like the conditioned soul. But even if you have a good guru, if there's not a third element, then the relationship doesn't set, the concrete doesn't set. And the third element looks very simple. That's water,
Water.
aqua. And that water is faith. Unless someone has implicit faith in guru, then how can there'll just be some external show. And many times in our zeal, in our Gaudiya Vaishnava institutions, and there's quite a few today in the world, not just ISKCON, in our zeal to give people the holy name and share bhakti with them, we oftentimes tend, I think, to push people to take initiation quickly or
Yeah.
something, and the cement doesn't set right.
Mm,
There's not enough water or something, and it starts to crumble, and then the whole building can collapse, and that happens sometimes. And people they die in the building, and they
mm,
stop their practice of bhakti.
mm. Powerful analogy. Yeah. Yesterday I will record another podcast with another Vaishnava. We were talking about how many times initiation ends up being for some like a membership card basically, or like something like to just to get it and I'm in, and after I get it I no longer become concerned with going deeper because I'm inside the club, so to say. And again, this type of misunderstandings come from the lack of proper water in the equation on the building blocks. So thank you for that analogy. It helps me a lot. May I go without going too personally into the details, but at the moment after the first guru happened to have some problem, how you yourself, how to say, kept yourself deeply faithful to the principle of guru, though you may have been, of course, brokenhearted about the individual, the the Vyasti representation of the guru. How you kept your faith in guru as a principle, as an agency, and not get both of them mixed, no, like the failure, so to say, in one level at least of the representative, and the infallibility of the department of Guru Tattva. How you navigated that during those complex years, basically.
Well, looking back on my history and things that happened, looking with the eye of Shastra
Mm-hmm.
through that lens, I can see that the reason I was able to stay was because of good association. The Sangha is everything for us. And I had some association with devotees who had at least, let's say, some middle uh, kind of faith in the holy name. And I felt like I came here to that place not to get a person, a guru or something, but I came there to get the holy name
Mm-hmm.
and to get the Bhagavatam, to get Krishna. And this person left, but I made promises in front of the deities that I would chant a certain number of rounds every day, that I would follow certain principles. So maybe he can't do that anymore, but I should continue because I made this
Mm-hmm.
promise.
Yeah, yeah. I appreciate your point on the association you received. You mentioned this idea of devotees having some intermediate, if I understood properly, level or faith, and that was more than enough to keep you inspired and connected and going. And maybe they were not the Raghunath Das Goswami that you were expecting as a guru, but that type of sangha, sincere Madhyam Bhaktas, let's put it that way, was more than enough to nourish and keep you inspired to continue your commitment. So I'm saying that because sometimes
Speaking about,
devotees may over idealize. Okay, I had a problem with this guru, and now if there's no super Mahabhagavat immediately available, everything is lost. And no, you can take shelter and connection with some sangha of peers or brothers, sisters, so on, and that keeps you nourished till you can connect with some particular wise elder, so to say. Right? I don't know. You were going to say something.
yeah, yeah, it's become kind of a popular thing or common thing, at least in our society today, to speak disparagingly about ISKCON. I think to try to look at it in a good way, that devotees want to protect innocent people from getting abused and misused, which has happened in
Yeah.
that big institution. But I've marked in my research work and my meeting different sadhus and mahants and persons in Puri and Vrindavan and elsewhere that, I mean, there's always some angry, nasty people, but among so many of the sadhus in Orissa and Vrindavan and elsewhere, they appreciate ISKCON. And one comment that I hear a lot of times from them, why they appreciate, they say, those people really have Guru Bhakti.
Mm.
They really have faith in their Prabhupada. And when I look back in my experiences as a very young, immature devotee, uh, I can see that really helped me. It wasn't, looking back now, I don't consider, frankly, the feelings that I was hearing about Srila Prabhupada to always be so deep, yet
Mm-hmm.
they helped me.
Mm-hmm.
There was some kind of faith there. Maybe it was lokik shraddha, or just kind of common faith, but there was
Mm.
some kind of shraddha there. And that's so important because of those shraddha tata sadhu. If we, the first thing in bhakti is shraddha, and that comes from associating with devotees who are more advanced than us.
Yes. Yeah, always makes me think about also some expressions like Kanishta Bhakta, Kanishta Adhikari, like in a disparaging way. But actually, to be a Kanishta Bhakta is glorious in its own way because it speaks about having some faith in Bhakti of a neophyte type, but you're already on the path, no? Like when Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur describes in Madhura Kadambini the 6 symptoms of Anishtita Bhajana Kriya, and each of them is more embarrassing than the other, so to say. but all of them are confirmations that we are on the path, right? So in one sense, it's a confirmation. You are on the path. You can celebrate that. That's not the ultimate goal. Don't become complacent there, but it's part of the path as well. So, switching a little bit, but in connection to the topic of your Guru Maharaj Madhavananda Ji, your Gurudev was born in Orissa, and you've spent many years there, if I'm not mistaken, 3 decades now. So I'm wonder how living in Jagannath Puri has influenced your understanding and practice of devotional service, or to put it simply, which unique flavor has Puri brought to your experience of bhakti?
Hmm. We all see the world through the lens of our particular feelings and conceptions.
Mm-hmm.
And I have a certain vision, of course, which comes from someone who was born and raised in the United States and joined in Los Angeles in 1982. And from my perspective and things there, which at that time for Gaudiya Vaishnavas, pretty much, and I see this pretty much in all sanghas all over the world, not just in ISKCON, but all different Gaudiya sanghas, especially outside of India, the
Mm-hmm.
ashram or the temple, the mission of their guru is like everything.
Mm-hmm.
And people can conceive that they could be Krishna conscious or something outside of that. I was a little bit of a radical thinker before I joined. If you know of some American art or literature, my favorite musician was Frank Zappa,
Okay,
and
yeah,
I liked
that says
literatures
something.
like that and things. Yeah, I liked his social. My favorite author was Kirk Vonnegut Jr. Those
Mm-hmm.
were the kind of person, they were my heroes. But that kind of social challenge, that kind of social uh, disrest, I didn't really experience in ISKCON for so long because we were just told just to do what you're supposed to do. And the institution, the temple was everything, and that kept us busy. But when I came to my Guru Maharaj and I came to Orissa, at one point, he told a few of us, myself and a couple of God brothers, that better you live outside the temple. He said, because they won't understand what you're doing.
Mm-hmm.
And so we did. We shifted outside and we started our publishing work, and another one was doing some video work, and another was doing audio work. And staying in Orissa, I got a perspective that I had never experienced before in Los Angeles or in different temples in the West. And that was I saw people who were natural Vaishnavas from birth, growing up in Gaudiya Vaishnava families. And here in Puri, nobody lives in an ashram.
Mm-hmm.
Practically, there's a very maybe in the whole
Mm-hmm.
city there might be maybe there's 50 people living in ashrams. I don't know, probably a little more than that or something, but
Mm-hmm.
practically nothing compared to the millions, probably hundreds of thousands at least of Vaishnavas here in Puri. People they're real people. They live at home, they have jobs, and they take care of their children, and they chant japa every day, and they worship Radha Krishna. Every Ekadasi here in Puri, there's 2 or 3 different 24-hour kirtans we hear going on with villagers near our
Mm-hmm.
ashram here. It's just they're doing it in a natural way because they want to do it. And some of them have some baggage. Some of them it's a scandal, but some of them like cricket, or some
Mm-hmm.
of them
Cricket.
watch movies or something. But
Okay, we can forgive them.
they're not embarrassed about
Yeah.
that. While in the West, sometimes
Mm-hmm.
we place so much stress for these new people who have come to Krishna consciousness, this new system. We place so much stress on the externals. They understand watching cricket's not really the work of a sadhu, and that's not going to help me spiritually. But they're attached to it. But the difference is they're not ashamed
Mm-hmm.
to. It's just yeah, I watch cricket, big deal, get over it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they're not ashamed of that,
Yeah.
and they have their own lives, and they come together with their friends and they do kirtan every night, and they have katha and things, and they go to the temple of Jagannath for darshan, and that's maybe their official affiliation, if you will, and they have a
Mm-hmm.
guru or something, but they're natural people, and that's what I want to very much see all over the world when we speak about the Krishna consciousness movement, not just the ISKCON institution, or the other institution, or the Gaudiya Vedanta Samiti, or Pure Bhakti, or this one or that one. All glories to all of them. And they have some function, some important role to play. But until we as individuals start to have our own businesses, especially the grihastas, of course. Sometimes the sannyasis also do. But when the grihastas have their own businesses and they have friends and they live nearby each other and they have their schools, and it's not something that's handed to you on a plate where you're informed that this such and such person is your temple authority and you have to have faith in that person, which is a kind of spiritual rape, in my opinion, where I'm being forced to artificially have faith in someone. It's a natural thing. And then bhakti is really going to take off because people, especially intellectuals and artists, when they come to the temple and they see if things are very rigid and organized in a certain way, very institutional and corporate, those kind of people just turn around and run away. And then the kind of people you get that stay are the ones who like corporate institutional stuff. And it just becomes worse. So but those kind of persons, when they come and you tell them, if you tell them, please come to my temple, we have a temple that holds 50,000 people and you should come and experience it. Some people may like that. In America, they have what they call mega churches.
Yes.
And some people really like to be part of the mega church. But I find that strong individuals, kind of people that I'd like to see taking up the practice of bhakti, who are more intellectuals, who are more artists, strong individuals, they're afraid of that. They see this is like a cult or something, and they turn around and run the other way.
Yeah.
Just today, I was having a discussion with one wonderful artistic friend, scholarly artist, and we were speaking about Vrindavan and about Mayapur. And I shouldn't get started on it. We were both expressing how we don't feel very inspired going there today. And I made a comment. I told him that the people, the big construction worker kind of managers, were trying to make big facilities. What they fail to see is that although there's a success in numbers, most of the people who are coming are Indian tourists from Delhi or from Kolkata, and not so many Westerners, and certainly not so many artists or intellectuals, which are the kind of people we'd like to get. The kind of tourist people, they'll come no matter what. You have a big building, you have whatever, they're inspired by that. But I personally, and this is part of our work with our publications and our katas and retreats and things, I want to try to make a place for artists and for intellectuals.
Yeah, thinking people, sensitive people, people that can, that are choosing Krishna Bhakti, so to say, for the right reasons. That first of all, they are choosing Krishna Bhakti, and for the right reasons on top of that, right? And I like to think in my
Yeah,
mind to, sorry,
people,
yes,
people who
no,
are
no,
free and people who are radical.
yeah. As you may imagine, I like the word radical. I like to speak about radical personalism and so many ways of being radical. And I always remember Prabhupada saying that he was independently thoughtful people, and that's a scary line, so to say, invites for individuation, but that's a call to become all that we can be. Yeah. And as I like to think, to become pilgrims on this journey and not merely tourists, right? Because we can also be tourists in the spiritual landscape, and not committed pilgrims, so to say. So in connection to the influence of Puri in the way you live bhakti, a perennial question I like to ask you, which is, how do you personally differentiate between cultural elements in Gaudiya Vaishnavism and what's of universal application, so to say? Because sometimes cultural elements can be taken as absolute and get in the way, or sometimes I'm thinking maybe there is a way to take cultural elements and in a way that they can be integrated and become part of the Leela at one point, so to say. Like I can think of Prabhupada, as I was telling, that he liked to play harmonium, but we never hear of harmonium as being one of the instruments in the lila. But he loved to play harmonium, and once one devotee asked him, "Is there harmonium in Golok Vrindavan?" And Prabhupada said, "A little bit." No? And for me, it was charming how he said, and I just thought, okay, maybe there was no harmonium till now, but now Prabhupada likes it so much that it will become part of the lila for his pleasure and the pleasure of so many. So I don't know how you deal with this perennial question between cultural elements and what's eternal and universal, and how much they navigate, how to navigate that tension between each other.
Well, for me personally, Maj, it's not just Puri, but in my
Yes.
personal conception and my personal journey, that began probably my first guru was my mother, and my second was my stepfather. And my mother was a poet and a thinker. My stepfather was an artist. And I learned something about the general conception of art, which is relative, where one person, they find inspiration in one thing and another person finds in something else. But a cultured person should appreciate the principle of art. I'll give you an
Mm-hmm.
example. Many Gaudiya Vaishnavas speak in a disparaging way about abstract art.
Mm-hmm.
But Srila Rupa Goswami in Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, he says that colors represent different emotions. White represents Hasya Ras, bluish black. Bluish color represents Sringara Ras, black represents Karuna Ras, tragedy and things. Different colors evoke different emotions and feelings on their own. So if we consider like that, then you can look at a painting, an abstract painting, and you can appreciate it perhaps. That all
Mm-hmm.
the artist had this particular expression that he wanted to convey, and it worked. Now, maybe this is not the kind of painting I want to put in my house, but I can appreciate the feelings of the artist. So, my grandma used to say, quoting Bhakti Vinod, he would say the Sarup Lakshana of a sadhu is Saranagati, is surrender. So, in a
Yeah.
similar way, the Sarup Lakshana of art is Krishna Bhakti.
Mm-hmm.
That's the principal characteristic of it, and how that will manifest will be a little different in different people. Going back to art, we just finished a magazine, Bindu magazine, about Jayadev Goswami, and I illustrated it with a dozen or more Basoli paintings from the 1700s, and I love the colors in those paintings. The white is often made from conch shells, and different colors are made from very natural elements, and you can feel it looking at them. Now, in
Mm-hmm.
contrast, there's another very talented artist that I know of in West Bengal. He's from Russia, and he's doing paintings, but he uses kind of colors which to me look a little like day glow or something, like something might glow in the dark. And
Mm-hmm.
I'm not so inspired by those personally, but then other
Mm-hmm.
persons do like them because art is a relative conception. So what I appreciate in Puri is the difference. And Srila Prabhupada spoke about that. He said that our for his ISKCON society, that what is the expression he used? Krishna Kun, that unity and diversity.
Mm-hmm.
But what is our unity? Our unity is there in body. And a small child makes a drawing, very simple sketch of Krishna playing a flute, and it's terrible artistically, but you appreciate the feeling that the child is given and put into that, and you
Mm-hmm.
may praise the child for what they've done.
Mm-hmm.
But then on the other hand, there's some master who makes a painting which is so much technically better, but even sometimes the master in his painting may not touch your heart as
Mm-hmm.
much as that stick figure that was
Yeah.
done by the small child. So what I find, and this comes to a subject about sociology, if you study sociology of religion, and this is coming back to Pori in my personal experience, if you study sociology of religion, they one of the subjects that they look into is conversion. And historically speaking, someone was raised as a Muslim and they become a Catholic. Someone's raised as a Christian, they become a Buddhist. Someone's raised as a Christian and they become a Hare Krishna devotee. That what happens is they lose their friends, they lose their society that they had previously in their Christian family, whatever, when they join the Hare Krishna movement. And when they enter into the new society of believers, there's a problem. The problem is they don't know the language, they don't know the culture, they don't know the diet, they
Mhm,
don't know the rituals, they don't know so many things. And they want to be accepted, they want to be loved.
mhm,
So, to make up for that lack of expertise, they become fanatics.
mhm,
And we see that over and over and over again. Some of
mhm,
the biggest fanatics I've met in the Hare Krishna movement, pushing Hinduja and kind of things, are ironically persons who grew up as hippies in America, but then later they became born again Hare Krishnas, and especially if they married an Indian woman, now all of a sudden they're purer than the purest, and they
mhm,
have this fanatical kind of mentality. So what I see in Puri is such an amazing place that Jagannath, he's there for everyone. And we made a magazine some years ago called The Hidden Identity of Lord Jagannath. And in that magazine, we examine who is Jagannath and how, when we talk about recognition of someone, recognizing someone, it's a relative concept. And we spoke about how, for certain politicians, for certain movie stars, Jagannath is a cultural symbol and
mhm,
they want to get on the right side so they'll get votes. And then there are other people in Orissa. There's even Muslims there's some villages in Orissa where they have Rath Yatra and the Muslims build the cart. There's one village like that
mhm,
in Orissa.
mhm.
And sometimes they Jagannath Mahaprasad. Some Christians who also worship Jagannath.
Yeah.
There's Buddhists, there's Shaivites and Ganapatnis and Shaktas, and there's members of the Ramanuja and the Vadakalite school and the Tankalite school and the Gaudiya Vaishnavas, and so many different persons worship Jagannath, and they all have different perspectives, and that's Jagannath. Je Rupa Chinti Dasi Se Rupa Hoy. Vrindavan Das Thakur says the Lord manifests according to their particular mood. So this is
Mhm,
something cultural, a broad perspective that I got from my mother and stepfather, and I've also gotten from living in Puri, that
mhm,
we should be broad-minded. And our unity is there in devotion to Krishna. Now, some people may paint with day glow colors, some people may paint with traditional handmade colors, but the most important thing is the devotion to Krishna.
Thank you, Madhavananda ji. I was thinking, of course, first of all, about the meaning of Jagannath and how he's approached it from so many angles and receiving everyone's heart, basically, in that diversity. And but also in relation to what you mentioned about sociology and how sometimes the converts leave their previous quote unquote leave their previous culture and embrace a new one. I assume you read this book of Purnachandra Swami Purnachandra Dasa at that time, Unspoken Obstacles on the Path to Bhakti, and he will say at one point, no, like on a sociological level, like being a Prabhupada disciple, say, I don't think it ever happened before in the history of humanity that such a big group of humans suddenly from one day to another left their previous culture and embraced a new one. No? Left, quote unquote, how much you can leave a culture from all your life from one day to another, how much you can embrace a new one from one day to another. And the gap that created, although we thought, okay, now I'm in, now I'm this, still there is some natural transition in that. So yeah, I appreciate that point and the importance of integrating these elements in a natural way. One more question regarding Puri. I'm tempted to ask you before we go back to Guru Tattva, if you allow me. And I like to hear your personal perspective on this. It's a somehow unrelated topic, but always connected to Jagannath Puri. So, and I think I talked to you about that, and you told me some years ago that you were doing some research. So, just for me to know the update of that research in connection to the possibility of a Nitya Jagannath Puri, where Gaur Lila is going on in eternity. which are your personal thoughts on that? Because sometimes we hear that there's a Nitya Navadvip, and Mahaprabhu will be there with his lila, and some devotees may say that's only Navadvip. In Puri, that doesn't happen. That's a nine mythical lila only on earth when he's a sannyasi. But I remember you also even mentioned about some authors in Puri who had some Ashtakaliya lila Smaranam of Mahaprabhu in Puri and other details. So just checking out with you if there is any further updates from the last time I talked to you about it. And which are your
There's so
personal
many
thoughts?
examples of that. First, yeah, Jagannath Puri is a dham because
Mm-hmm.
it's a place of the pastime of Lord Jagannath. He does his leelas here. In Sanatan Siksha, in Chaitanya Charitamrita, where it mentions all the different planets in the spiritual world, one of them, the deity there, is Lord Jagannath.
Hmm.
And my Guru Maharaj spoke some very esoteric things, which really are not so appropriate just to throw out in a casual kind of way. They take a lot of time to digest and to build
Hmm.
upon, but nevertheless, we'll just go ahead and throw it out with the understanding that as Kaviraj Goswami describes in Adi Lila chapter 3 of Chaitanya Charitamrita, these subjects protect themselves, and people who don't have the depth can't understand it anyway.
Hmm.
In his commentary, in their commentaries, both Jiva Goswami and Laghu Vaishnav Toshani and Sanatan Goswami, Vishwanath and Sartadarshini, on the 46th and 47th chapters of the 10th canto, they describe something very, very far out, that in Vrindavan, there's a closed chamber. There's two
Mm-hmm.
chambers of Vrindavan. And Jiva Goswami brings this up more in Gopal Champu, where he explains that uh, when Krishna and Balaram stayed behind in Mathura, Nanda Maharaj couldn't tolerate their separation, so he also stayed back. He stayed in Mathura. But at the same time, there was an expansion of Nanda Maharaj and all the boys who returned to Vrindavan. And explaining this point, Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur explains how when Akrura arrived in Vrindavan, at first he saw it was a place of great ecstasy, and the deer and the cows, and everyone was so full of joy. And Vishwanath explains that at that point he had entered into the chamber of union. There's both the
Mm-hmm.
chamber of union and a chamber of separation, Sambhog and Virpalamba. And then later he entered into the chamber of separation. And he saw everyone distraught and crying. A similar description is given in the Narottam Vilas by Narahari Chakravarti, where he explains how, who was that? That Narottam Das Thakur, when
Mm-hmm.
he first went to Navadvip, when he arrived there, he saw a beautiful, ecstatic place, and there's kirtan going on everywhere, and there's banana trees and auspicious symbols and things, and he was in the chamber of union. And then he went a little further, and all of a sudden he saw everybody crying, and all the houses were deserted and things, and the residents were crying in separation from Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So
Mm-hmm.
in one purport in Chaitanya Charitamrita, our Srila Prabhupada quotes Srila Bhakti Siddhanta that these three dhams are non-different: Navadvip Dham, Vrindavan Dham, and Jagannath Puri Dham. Uh, But Jagannath Puri, in the language of my guru, in the language of Jagannath Puri itself, it's called Gupta Dham. It's a hidden place. It's
Mm-hmm.
called Durlabha Kshetra, is another name of Jagannath Puri. Very difficult place to enter. In the Skanda Purana, it says, Rahasyamet tat paramam Vishnu sthanam anuttamam. That sthanam anuttamam, this place is very excellent, but
Mm-hmm.
Rahasyamet tat is very,
Mm-hmm.
very confidential. It's a very secret kind of place. And so in this place, we find two conceptions. We find smarta vichar, or the conception of the smartas. And we see that in that there's five different panchatirthas in Puri that you're supposed to take bath in. You're supposed to take bath in the
Mm-hmm.
ocean and Narendra Sarovar and Sweta Ganga before you go to see Jagannath. And there's smarta considerations given in Skanda Purana and different Puranas, different literatures. But there's also the Goswami Vichar. And we see that in the Veda Kirtan pastimes, chapter 12, of Madhya Lila of Chaitanya Charitamrita, wherein Maharaj Prataparudra was on the roof of his palace and Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya was pointing out to him the different associates of Mahaprabhu as they entered Puri. And Maharaj Prataparudra was watching the kirtan, and he says, "This is okay. I've heard Hare Krishna kirtan before. That goes on in Orissa." He said, "But I've not seen kirtan like this before." And then he asked Sarvabhauma, who was coming from a great Smarta background, he asked him, "What are these guys doing? They're not shaving their head. They're not fasting. They're not taking bath. They're not going to have darshan of Jagannath. They're all running to the Gambhira to have darshan of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu." That's Goswami Vichar. We're not so much concerned with the external rituals and different things. But in Jagannath Puri, just as in Kurukshetra, the rasa is mixed. And you have, in Kurukshetra, you have the members of the Yadu dynasty meeting the members of the residents of Vrindavan. And the members of the Yadu dynasty have so much opulence, and they see Krishna as Bhagavan in a very opulent way. And they're meeting with the residents of Vrindavan. It's, in one sense, it's Rasabas, and it's disturbing. But what happens at Kurukshetra, whereas generally Kaviraj Goswami says that Aishvarya Priti Sankuchita, that opulence makes love shrink. In Kurukshetra, the opposite happens. It becomes more and more intense because they look at him and they say, hey, the Brijbasis look at Krishna and they say, we don't want this stuff. You left our village. You went to the big city. Now you become a big man. Everybody says you're God, and they're all worshiping you. But do you remember your mother? Do you remember your father? Do you remember the cows of Vrindavan? Do you remember Vamsivat? We want you back there. And their feelings become more intense. So that Kurukshetra is described by Srila Bhaktisiddhanta and by our Srila Prabhupada as the same feeling in Jagannath Puri. In the language of my Guru Maharaj, he said that it's Aishvarja Madhurja Yugala Milan. It's a place with a combination of both opulence and sweetness. And so some persons can't see the opulence because of the sweetness. Some persons can't see the sweetness because of they're absorbed in the opulence. I like to encourage persons to have a broader view and see both in their perspective, and to go for a Goswami Vichar, go for the sweet road.
Thank you. I'm also remembering, how Sanatana Goswami in the Brihad Bhagavatamrita, that is basically the first book of the Goswamis in chronological order. He describes Jagannath Puri as a realm in the spiritual world, basically, also, right? Like validating its presence there. And going back to Guru Tattva, Madhavanandaji, if I can ask you, bring you back there for a minute.
Yeah.
The topic of Guru Tattva in general has been many times described as one of the most important topics, but also many times as one of the most difficult to understand. And I will add, if some topic is one of the most difficult to understand, means it's one of the easiest to misunderstand. So, if you agree with that idea that Guru Tattva is crucial, but also very delicate and very easy to misunderstand, in your opinion, why do you think that's the case? Why Guru Tattva is so difficult to misunderstand? What's that about Guru Tattva that makes it so easy to misunderstand, so to say?
I think you answered the question at the beginning of our discussion. Can you repeat that statement you made before here in our ashram from Srila Bhaktisiddhanta?
Humility is that which is absent when there is an enjoying spirit.
Yeah. So without humility, we can't come to Guru. Without humility, we don't see Guru. We see some ordinary person. And we have our conception of Guru is just at best an ecclesiastical institutional one. We don't see that this person is here for, we don't see it in terms of bhakti. And that vision comes when we have some personal desire for our own selfish enjoyment. And there's a saying by the author, I can't remember the cartoonist's name, but he wrote the strip called Pogo. Great strip. And at one point in Pogo's a story about some raccoons and some possums and different creatures who live in the forest, and they're talking as in a cartoon, and different things happen, and he uses that to convey different political and social conceptions. And at one point there's a war going on, and there's a big battle, and they're fighting, and through many of the strips the fighting is going on, but you never see the enemy. And finally, at the climax of the story, Pogo, the character, comes forward and he
Mhm.
says, "We've met the enemy, and
Mhm.
he's us." And for me, when we talk about guru disciple, there's a lot of people focus on the fact that there's been so many uh, fall downs amongst the gurus and so many bogus gurus. But I don't, to me, I would say that would be like some feminist perhaps who wants to criticize marriages and criticize the husband as being at fault always. But we
Mm.
understand that in a marriage, there's two elements. There's a
Mhm.
husband and a wife. And I see both at fault. There's a saying in Hindi, beautiful saying, Guru mili laki laki sishya mili ek, that it's not hard to find a bona fide guru. There's millions and millions of bona fide gurus. In fact, according to our Siddhanta, the bona fide gurus far, far outnumber us because that's all the residents of the spiritual world. So it's not
Mhm.
hard to find a bona fide guru, but what's hard, Sishya Miliak, is to find
Disciple.
even one bona fide disciple. And so
Mhm.
instead of wanting to blame all the husbands and wanting to blame all the wives, I think it's much more healthy that both the husbands should understand what is the quality of a good wife, and wives should understand the girls who want to get married, what are the qualities of a good husband, and take responsibility on themselves for it instead of
Mhm.
letting their parents pick out a spouse for them, or worse yet, letting the church pick out a spouse for them.
Mm.
It becomes really crazy. It's something
Mm.
personal. And
Mhm.
so
Mhm.
when we look at this problem, there is a problem. There's a problem in marriage. There's a crisis in marriage in the West. I don't know what the statistics are now, but I think it's over 50%, maybe 60 or 70% divorce rate. And we
Mhm.
also have a very high rate of distrust in guru and disciple. There's been a lot of problems in it. But the solution is not just to take a stick and beat the gurus with it. The solution is to understand both aspects. And why
Mhm.
did I make this choice like this? And maybe I made some mistake from a sociological perspective, a broad perspective. I think it's healthy in Gaudiya
Mm.
Vaishnavism because many devotees, when they joined, like me, came because I took a guru because he was the guy, and that's just what you did. And my
Mm.
faith in him was really low key. It was really a common kind of faith. And then what happened? My heart was broken. He had some problems. He left and things. And what's happened to both to me as an individual and to many persons social in our society is that, and when a society, I'm talking about many different Gaudiya Vaishnav groups.
Mhm.
What's happened as a whole is we've become more healthy, and in the sense they say once burned, twice shy. So when
Mhm.
a child sticks his hand in the fire, it's fascinating, but then, whoa, I'm not going to do that again. And so then we
Mhm.
learn. And when we come in the early days, my temple president said he's a Mahabhagavat. 25 people said he's a Mahabhagavat. He must be a Mahabhagavat. And we do something in a rather cheap way, which I can find fault with the temple president. Or I can find fault with the 25 devotees who'd said like that. But a much healthier thing is to say, wow, I didn't have a proper perspective. That's my
Mhm.
personal thing. Actually, I'm working on a book long for many years now in the background called Vivida Sishyachari, the characteristics and types of different disciples. And
Mm.
I don't like to speak so much about Guru Tattva because that's something I can't understand. But I'd like to try to understand what it means to be a disciple. And my conviction is that if I'm a bona fide, genuine disciple, then Guru will manifest. Krishna will send. He'll see my desire. And according to the
Mhm.
quality and depth of my desire, Krishna will send a corresponding person. So I don't
Mhm.
see any problem. As we said, we've met the enemy and he's us.
Mhm. Mhm. And what do you say in this connection, following your point? Okay, if we are sincere as disciples, as students, as aspirants to truth, Guru will manifest. In some particular cases, at least if during some chapter of our lives we may not feel that the Guru has manifested like an individual, so to say, still Guru can manifest in the heart through previous acharya, through shastras, through life circumstances, and gradually lead us to a particular individual. I'm not denying that, but following also that for me, this is also an aspect of Guru Tattva that may be complex to understand for some, which is Samasti, Vyasti, Guru in one sense is one, Guru in one sense is Krishna. I don't want to sound too abstract. Uh, but if you play out the implication of that, Guru is Krishna, Krishna is omnipresent, Guru is omnipresent. If you have the eyes to see, of course, you may need one Vyasti Guru for you to learn to see. But will you say that if we are honest and sincere after some particular complex situation like the one you've gone or many others have gone, Guru still will manifest on a day to day, maybe not immediately in your next Diksha Guru, but in the form of other sadhus, sadhu sangha, previous acharya, life circumstance, you will be able to, I don't know, to find some of those 24 gurus that the Bhagavatam speak about and so on. Which advice will you share in those transitional spaces, so to say, for someone who is there?
Yeah, I think of the problem, the difficulty in understanding us is we've met the enemy and he's us. The difficulty is with me. The
Mm-hmm,
difficulty is that I have a sectarian perspective. The
mm-hmm,
difficulty is that I'm approaching bhakti and I only see the box that has been presented to me. And I think
mm-hmm,
if there's another box that has a different color or has a different shape or a different kind of
mm-hmm,
ribbon, that box can't be bona fide.
mm-hmm,
So we have to understand the principle you're saying of Samasti Guru and Vyasti Guru. Samasti Guru is the conglomerate, is everything is Krishna, but Samasti Guru, I would suggest too, means the principle of Guru. If you
yeah,
look in the writings of Shilesi Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, you'll find many times he speaks about the principle of Guru. And then Vyasti Guru is the person. We can give an analogy just like you go to a bank and you make friends with the bank teller and you open up a bank account and you
mm,
go in every week and you see your friend the bank teller and you get to know him, his wife and his family, and you talk to him in a personal way. Well, after 10 years maybe he retires or
yeah,
he gets fired, whatever. He's no longer at the bank. So you still have an account with the bank
yeah,
even
yeah,
if that individual is gone,
yeah. The
because we
agent
made
is
that
gone,
with
the
the bank.
agency is still there. Yeah.
Exactly. And so someone who's sincere, they'll see Samasti Guru everywhere. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta, in one article, he said a beautiful thing. I'm a little bit paraphrasing. I can't quote it exactly word for word, but it's very close if it's not exact. He said that I pray that I may see my Gurudev in every person. I may see him in every beast, every animal, every bird, every stone, every mountain, every river. I pray that I may see my Gurudev every year, every month, every week, every day, every hour, every second. And he says, if I don't see my Gurudev in everyone at all times, then I may fall prey to the bad desire to be Guru myself. So, with this problem that we have of sectarianism, that I like the box that I've been given, and I don't
Mm-hmm.
recognize another box. Bhaktivinoda Thakur says, then we can't recognize other sadhus, we can't appreciate other gurus and other persons, and we think that I've been given this box, so I can only have this box, and I
Yeah.
can't take items from any other box, and and we have a box mentality, and it causes a
Yeah.
lot of problems to us.
Yeah.
Whereas if we're looking for Krishna, we understand Krishna may hide inside of a ball, or some other different shaped
Mhm.
object or different colored object. He may appear in so many places. But if it's the real Krishna, and how do I know that? Because Chaitya Guru is in my heart. And according to the degree of my sincerity in crying, I'll
mm,
recognize him and I'll see him in every person, in every animal, in every rock, in every beast. I'll see him every year, every month, in so many different ways. We don't stress that kind of vision very often, I think, because we're sectarian.
I
Generally,
agree.
the Vaishnava societies that I see today, in the West especially, are rather sectarian, and they just only
Hmm.
want to have their colored box.
Totally agree. Amen. And I like to make the play of words with boxing, because boxing people, putting people in boxes is kind of, you are boxing them. It's a type of violence, right? It's like pruning what everything can be, and like keeping them in a bonsai version. Like it's this. It cannot grow beyond my box. It has to fit the box, and it has to remain predictable, controllable, which is another way of speaking about Maya, right? That which can be controlled. So, and Krishna himself, sometimes we take
Yeah,
for
and
granted who
Jagannath,
Krishna is. Sorry. Yeah.
going back to Jagannath Puri and the conception I've personally gained here, I find
Mm,
that when you look at cultures and communities who have a long history of Vaishnavism, they're much more broad-minded. And a
yeah.
good example is my teacher, Fakir Mohan Prabhu, right here,
Yes.
who
Hmm.
he was born at midnight on Janmashtami to a Gaudiya
Mm,
Vaishnava family. Now, people many times ask me, how could he have the name Fakir? Well, his
mm,
parents wanted a child and they tried for many years, they couldn't have one. At one point, there was a Muslim mendicant, sadhu, who came through their village and they approached him and they said, "Hey, can you please bless us so we can have a child?" And that sadhu, that Muslim sadhu, who's a fakir, told him, "Yes,
hmm.
I'll bless you. You'll have a son, a very good son." He said, "But uh, you have to two things you have to understand. You're not going to like. Number one, you should give him the name fakir. Otherwise, I don't agree
Hmm.
to give you a blessing. And number two, you should understand that your child is going to leave home and become a sadhu at a young age,
Mm,
which Fakir
mm,
Mahaprabhu did at the age of 12. So
mm,
this is a kind of culture here where, although perhaps today there's a lot of animosity between the Hindus and the Muslims, 50 years ago, 100 years ago, that wasn't so much. And
mm.
people could appreciate sadhus. And maybe they're they're Ramanuja sadhu or
Mhm.
a
Yeah,
Madhvacharya
yeah.
sadhu or a Shankaracharya sadhu. But they're a sadhu, and we a Muslim sadhu, and we can respect them. In India, in Jagannath Puri, there's a culture like that where we can appreciate.
Mhm,
But in the West, we don't have that kind of culture.
mhm.
Instead, in America, we have the Republican Party and the Democrat Party, and they hate each other. And it's only if you belong
Mhm.
to my party that you're really good. And
Yeah.
that was kind of the soil that Srila Prabhupada put the seeds of bhakti in. And the plant that grew up has some of those elements in it.
Mhm, mhm. Dualistic thinking. Yeah, us and them. And yeah, and that dualism pervades even into the Guru Tattva conception, and my guru, your guru, instead of saying, as I like to think many times, to heal some of our unredeemed layers and conception as Gaudiya Vaishnava, we may need to establish more a oneness foundation before going into the diversity, right? So before speaking about all the different gurus, starting with the guru is one, no? Before speaking about all the different forms of Krishna, starting with Advaya Gyan Tattva, no? The absolute is non-dual, the one that becomes many. Because if not, we can easily become polytheistic or dualistic, and in connection to Guru Tattva, sometimes, yeah, I always remember many times one of the classical questions is, okay, who you are, what's your name, and next question is, who is your guru? And you are supposed to reply with one word, with one person. No? You cannot reply in the plural, so to say. No, and but Chaitanya Charitamrita begins with Bande Gurun, right? The whole Chaitanya Charitamrita starts with those two words. I offer my pranam to my gurus in plural, right? So I like to say guru is sometimes could be seen as our best friend, not just to say we are equals, but there is a type of Vishramba friendship. So you cannot ask someone who is your friend, right? In singular. Why to limit that to a singular word? So yeah, sometimes we over localized guru, as you say, and I think that's a very sectarian, dangerous principle. In this connection, Madhavanandaji,
I
regarding
find it.
sorry, yeah, go on.
Okay, I was just going to say I find it rather humorous that sometimes some people like to quote this slogan, which our Srila Prabhupada said, that Guru is one, and then
Mm,
the Guru is one. Therefore, you should respect my Guru as your Guru.
mm,
And Amar Guru, Jagat Guru, my Guru is great, and your
mm.
Guru is not so great. They use that in exactly the wrong way.
Wow. Okay, I never thought about that possibility, but everything can happen. Interesting. So, regarding Guru as a friend, or we as somehow developing some type of friendship with the Guru in a healthy way as disciples, we were talking about the importance of, first of all, ascertaining, okay, not so much where is the Guru, but in one sense, where is the disciple, or where am I as a disciple? So, a few words, if you could share, what does it mean to be a disciple? No? Rupa Goswami will say, Vishram Bena Guru Seva, right? We are supposed to serve Sri Guru with a type of friendship, type of intimate, trust-based, loving service. So for example, to you, what does Vishrambena Guru Seva mean to you in practice?
Well, Vishrambena Guru Seva, Vishramba is a synonym for pranaya. In Sanskrit,
Hmm.
pranaya is, what is it? The
Like a type
pranaya is
of
one
one.
of the stages of ecstatic love. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is in pranaya with Srimati Radharani, Sri Krishna
Mhm.
Chaitanya Radha Krishna Nahi Anya. So when we say Vishrambena Guru Seva, that means when the disciple becomes one with Guru Dev, that's a very, very high thing. That's not a
Mhm.
small thing. But it begins, I would say that what is the most basic definition of a disciple is someone who has faith, and someone who's a sishya, who accepts sasana, who accepts chastisement from Guru.
Mhm.
And why does he have faith? Well, there's different types of shraddha. There's lokik shraddha and there's paramartik shraddha. Lokik, just what common people say, like we were speaking earlier, I believed in my zonal acharya guru because 25 people said so. But better than that is when we have Paramartik Shraddha, transcendental faith, which Jiva
Mhm.
Goswami says is Shastriya Shraddha, which is based on
Mhm.
Shastra. So again, that same Bij Datta Shastra, that chastisement, that learning is there from Shastra. So someone who has faith in Shastra, and many times devotees, they say there's three things, Prabhu, Guru, Sadhu, and Shastra. That's a misquote.
Mhm.
Narottam Das Thakur and Prem Bhakti Chandrakar, he said uh,
Sadhu Shastra Guru
he
Bhakya
says that
Chitta
Shastri
Kariyakya.
Sari Chachete Koriya Aikya. Thank you. He says it begins with sadhu. And who is sadhu? Sadhu is someone who gives us Shastra. And then from
Mm,
Shastra, we can understand who is Guru. So
mm,
that's a bona fide disciple. A bona fide disciple is not just a cult member who jumps up and down and says, Jai Gurudev, Jai Gurudev. You know, I like him
mhm,
because 25 people like him, because the institution likes him, because everybody says, to be a little heretical, but everybody says Srila Prabhupada is great, because everybody says it, therefore I agree with it. But he's a
mhm,
person. Why can't I should have a personal realization about that.
mm,
And as an individual, so if I approach, it depends on my approach. If I approach the principle of guru with the attitude that I want to be a member of the group, as you were saying earlier, I want to
mhm,
be accepted by everybody, then it's going to color my perspective, and I'm going to be that kind of so-called disciple, which is
mhm,
not a real disciple. But if I'm doing Atma Kranta, I'm crying in the heart, where is Krishna? Krishna, please help me. Who is your representative? I'm crying like that. And I'm willing then to accept chastisement. And I'm looking for someone who's going to give me Shastra, who's going to
mhm,
teach me something proper. And Bhaktivinoda Thakur, very controversially, he says that if Gurudev says something which is not according to Shastra, then the disciple has the right to question his guru. and to
Mm-hmm.
disagree with them. In the Narada Pancharatra, there's a verse which is also found in the Mahabharata, which begins Guru Apyapi
Guror apni
Liptasya, famous
apileptasya.
verse that one should
Mm-hmm.
reject. Right. One should reject such a guru. The same verse appears in Mahabharata, and it also appears in Narada Pancharatra. What I find disappointing is when devotees take that one verse out of context without reading the section of Mahabharata deeply, or without
Mm-hmm.
looking at that section of Narada Pancharatra, and just use it as a kind of stick to beat some of the so-called gurus or whatever on the head and establish their particular mood. It's wrong. So in the Narada Pancharatra, I could bring up these verses while we're talking if we wanted. Um, it's described that there's a discussion between Lord Brahma and his son Narad Muni. And Lord Brahma tells Narad Muni, you should get married.
Mm-hmm.
And then Narad Muni speaks this thing. He says, if someone gives you a wrong instruction, you have to reject them. And then he uses a phrase, I don't remember all the Sanskrit shlok, but he uses a phrase, sat sishya. A bona
Mm-hmm.
fide disciple will reject that of the guru. Well, how do we understand that? And the third offense of the holy name is Guru Vagya, is to disobey the orders of the guru.
Mm-hmm.
But we should see that sadhu shastra guru vakya chitete koriya aikya, that sadhu guru is someone who speaks shastra. And if sadhu guru speaks something which is maybe not shastra, and that is not necessarily evil or demoniac, Bhaktivinoda
Yeah.
in Jiva Dharma says is tatkalika and sarvakalika. I think you're probably familiar with those
Mm-hmm.
terms. Tatkalika means instructions from the Acharya, which is for a certain time, place, and circumstance. And he tells one person, you should get married. And he tells
Yeah.
another person, you should take sannyas and you should not stay in one place. So those are relative instructions for different persons in different times. Sarvakalika is an instruction for all persons at all times. Chant the holy names. That's an instruction for everyone. So we should understand and see like that Gurudev will naturally instruct different disciples in different ways, and it's according to the disciples' adhikar. The problem, again, that I see is when devotees join the mission of their guru. And again, I don't like it when people just beat on ISKCON because I find the same problem is there with different groups. At
Yeah.
Radhakund, I've observed this in some different Gaudiya mutts in so many places. We've met
Mm-hmm.
the enemy, he's us. It's not just
Mm-hmm.
ISKCON or the Babajis or this or that. But when people join and they have the attitude, I'm joined ISKCON. Now I am ISKCON. And
Mm.
we've gotten Kaivalya Mukti. And I've become the institution. I've given up my individuality.
American.
That's
Yeah. Yeah.
completely adverse to Bhakti.
Yeah. Remember, Purnachandra Swami will say that's a type of sayuja where you merge with the institution, and that's a form of impersonalism as well. Yeah. I was thinking, Madhavanandaji, about the point you made of Shat Guru and Shat Sisya, because sometimes we use this person, Shat Guru, a genuine Guru. But first, there has to be Shat Sisya. And Shat also means honesty, right? Like Sat has to do with truth, not like Sadhu, Satam. So the invitation to be introspective and honest as a disciple will naturally reveal Shat Guru in its proper light. I have one question because you emphasized a few times in connection to, okay, one as a disciple has to guide one's actions based on faith, which has to be scriptural, shastriya shraddha. Uh, and in that context, we accept chastisement. You used the word chastisement a few times. So I want just to clarify something here, because as you can imagine, to protect yourself in relation to our audience, because some people may get triggered or feel like, what? Why this Prabhu is
Sure.
emphasizing so much chastisement? He says that we are not about cultish stuff, but he's emphasizing chastisements a lot. So I like to ask in this context, what you think, because sometimes in the name of chastisement, of course, I'm not against chastisement coming from a place of love and protection and commitment, but sometimes in the name of chastisement, we will say, okay, that was tough love, and I have nothing against tough love, but sometimes we over justify, over abuse this idea, and ends up being different forms of pastoral abuse or abuse of authority, religious figures. So where to draw the line between tough love and pastoral abuse? Now, if you could share some thoughts to develop some
It's
discernment.
it's the pendulum swing.
Yes.
You have some authoritative people saying that you have to listen to your temple president and all the leaders are your guru, and then abuse goes on. But that abuse,
Mm.
incidentally, can only go on if I'm going to accept that person as
Mhm.
my authority. If I walk out and say, I'm sorry, but this is not right, I don't agree
Mm.
with this, then I'm not going to be abused. I have a
Mhm.
personal obligation to myself. Now, I'm very
Yeah.
sensitive with this. I have family members and dear friends who've been deeply abused. We have PTSD
Mhm.
in the Hare Krishna movement. There's quite a few people, actually,
Yep.
who've been
Yep.
heavily abused. And I've come to understand this from a little bit of a modern psychological perspective and also from our tradition. From a modern psychological perspective, there's certain things they call triggers. Let's
Mhm.
say, for example, a young woman in our society, a young girl, is sexually molested by a Gurukul teacher, Hare Krishna, and he brings her into a private room and closes the door and locks it behind her.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
then that girl, when she grows up, whenever someone wants to take her into a room by herself, and especially if they
Yeah.
close the door behind her, she gets a trigger, and
Yeah.
she's taken back to that previous abuse, she becomes very, very disturbed. So triggers are a very interesting subject. Recently, we were speaking in Mayapur with the Russian devotees, something about the meeting in Kurukshetra, one of my favorite subjects, between Krishna and the gopis. And I was reading some commentaries who acharyas are describing how when Krishna met the gopis, one of the first things that he said to them was, I'm an offender.
Mhm.
And he told them, if you want to leave me, you can. I'll accept
Mhm.
that. And I
Mm.
was commenting how this is how we should deal with triggers. Not that
Mhm.
when somebody comes and says, Prabhu, I was abused by my temple president, by my guru, this or that. Not that we respond, well, it was your karma, Prabhu. And you should attain the compound system. You should just accept it as your karma.
Oh my God.
That's a kind of violence.
Yeah.
That's very, very
Apichetsu
wrong.
apichetsu duracharo tattenukampam.
Yeah,
Oh my God.
and we misuse those things. And so the pendulum goes the other way then, where we can't
Mm.
listen to those things at all. We can't listen to any
Mhm.
kind of authority, and we want to throw
Mhm.
out the whole conception that guru
Yeah.
should chastise me. But that's a very
Yeah.
important thing. If guru doesn't chastise me, then how am I going to make progress? But the
Mhm.
fundamental principle, the building block we we're talking about in making the structure of the cement and the sand and make them come together is the water of faith. So
Mm.
if that faith is not strong faith, if it's not Shastriya Shraddha, if it's just Lokik Shraddha because everybody says so, then things are going to fall apart.
Yeah.
Again, in a social perspective, I can see that the anger that has come from a lot of devotees who've been abused, our second generation devotees especially, but basically everybody in the Krishna conscious movement. I've also seen amongst the Babajis, amongst the Gaudiya Mat devotees, especially in ISKCON because it's a bigger society, there's been so much pastoral abuse. But there's been
Mhm.
abuse not just of children, but also of the grihastas. There's been abuse of the women. There's been abuse. There's been abuse of sannyasis.
Mhm.
Maharaj, I become very just. I told Kadamba Kana Maharaj some years ago. I said, Maharaj, please don't mind. I'm a little cheeky speaking. I'm a grihasta speaking to a sannyasi like this. I said, but I'm happy that I'm married. And I'm only married to one wife because if I was a sannyasi in this
Mm.
society, it means I'd be married to the whole institution. And I consider that a kind of abuse of the
Mm.
sannyasis, where they're
Mm.
not given independence. Gurus in
Mm.
some societies are not given independence either. They're treated like little puppets that the managers
Mhm.
are going to control. And then that
Yeah.
works its way down. We have grihastas. Grihastas should be independent. We need
Mhm.
independent thinkers. We made a magazine a few years ago, which was comprised of my tears. It was very, very close to my heart. It's our Krishna Katamrita Bindu issue 582. If I could do a screenshot, I'd show it to you. But we called it Bhakti and Independent Thinking.
Mhm.
And I consider independent thinking so very, very important. At the end of the issue, I wrote a editorial, which we called Good Parenting Means Trusting Them to Grow Up. And we spoke about how a parent, a 2-year-old child approaches, the parent sees a child picking up a bottle of poisonous bleach or cleanser, and the mother tells the child, "Don't do that. Don't drink that." And then
Mm.
the child says, "Why not?"
Mhm.
Now, some liberal persons, some people like to use woke as a bad word. Someone may say that
Mhm.
some woke person may say, "It's okay. Think for yourself, my dear 2-year-old child. Drink it if you want. Don't drink it.
Mhm.
You decide for yourself. You be an independent thinker." But that's not a very healthy thing to tell a 2-year-old child. Now,
Mhm.
that's one way of dealing with it. Another way is that the parent will just say, "No, don't do that." And then the child says, "Why not?" And then the parent says, "Because I said so, that's why."
Yeah.
A third and much more satisfying way to deal with it is when the child says, "Why not?" And the parent says, "Because it'll hurt you. You'll suffer. You
Mhm.
may die." Now, if in the second scenario, where the parent says, "Don't drink it because I said so," if that child grows up and he's a 30-year-old man, he's married, and one day his wife purchases a bottle of bleach in the store, and he
Mhm.
walks into the house, and the 30-year-old man says, "We can't have that in the house. Mommy told me that it's forbidden."
Mm.
That's really sick. But that's
Yeah.
what goes on in Gaudiya Vaishnavism. With children, you want them to grow up. So the best thing is not to tell them, "Just don't do it because I said so." But the best thing is to give them some understanding. Why?
Yeah.
Krishna Kun.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's appropriate for me to say something.
Can Krishna Kun say something, my wife?
Of course, it's the two of you inseparable. Madhavan Krishna, Madhavananda and Krishna Kul, please.
Okay.
Okay.
Move over.
Hare
Come on.
Krishna.
Come close.
Jai Krishna.
Uh, my
Put
pranams,
your hands
Maharaj.
down.
Keep yourself in the camera, please. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. So I wanted to um, answer your question from Purna Chanda Maharaj's book that you mentioned earlier today, from the
Mhm.
Unseen Obstacles on the Path of Bhakti. There is something that I found there which I really found to be a gem. Um, he says that that dividing line between feeling abused by someone and just being disciplined for your own benefit by Gurudev, the dividing line is that when you feel that the authority who is correcting you, who is chastising you, maybe, in any case, correcting you at least, when you feel that it's really for your benefit, it's not his need to be angry, it's not his
Mhm.
need to abuse you,
Mhm.
and he's detached, and you just feel that it's really for your benefit, that that correction is coming to you, then you can accept it, and then it's not abuse. So this is what I
Mhm.
wanted to mention.
Great,
Thank
Krishna
you.
Kun. Thank you. That is exactly some of the thinking too.
Yeah. Yeah. I
So
totally
when
agree.
we have these, to look back what I was speaking before, Krishna taught us how to deal with these triggers. He didn't tell
Mhm.
the gopis that look, just get over it. And
Mhm.
I sent Uddhava to you, preach to you that actually we're always together, and I'm always with you, and I'm all pervading. Krishna could have said
Mhm.
a bunch of things like that, but he didn't do
Mhm.
that. Krishna
Mhm.
acknowledged the pain of the gopis, and
Mhm.
he even gave them the right to reject him.
The freedom.
That
Yeah.
he's God. That's beautiful. And
Yeah.
so that this is a way in my mind that we should deal with devotees who've been abused.
Mhm.
We should
Mhm.
respect them and even respect their right to give up bhakti, to give up Krishna
Mhm.
consciousness. And we should tell them, "I'll still love you. You're still my friend. And I understand why you may want to give it up because of your abuse and things like that. I respect
Yeah.
that." And don't try to just start preaching to them this thing, even though the philosophy you may say may be true, but it's not there in the heart. And Krishna taught us this in Kurukshetra.
Mhm. Mhm. Beautiful. Totally necessary in healing, and totally agree with your words. And as you say, even if they choose to leave the path or momentarily, they want to take a healthy distance. It makes perfect sense, and we can still support them from a human place. Each of us,
Maybe
heart
it's
to heart.
needed sometimes.
Yes, of course.
Maybe sometimes we just need to
Yeah,
check out for a while and get away from certain persons and certain
yeah,
unhealthy atmospheres,
yeah,
and so that we can rediscover bhakti on our
yeah,
own terms.
yeah. Yeah, like I remember with some people who I know, we have gone through a common situation of some abuse in relation to a guru figure, and that those people will tell me, Maharaj, I love Krishna and everything's fine, but don't talk to me about guru, please. But they were not telling me I'm rejecting the idea of guru. They were not rejecting the idea. They were just give me a break from that tattva, from that department for the time being, because I'm still to trigger. I'm still dealing, processing my trauma. And it's like, of course, it makes absolute perfect sense. If I will just push Guru Tattva on top of you, that will be abuse from my part now. That would be violence and lack of consideration of you as a person and your journey of healing. So thank you for
But
that.
Maharaj, I know 5 verses from Bhagavad Gita, and I'm going to quote them, and they must be true. It's our Siddhanta. That's a kind of violence. That's a kind of impersonal preaching down to somebody, preaching at somebody, instead of
Yeah.
understanding their heart and coming and being with them. We went to Ukraine 5 times last year,
Mm,
and I was trying to figure out what kind of message, and we went there to share some Harikatha, what kind of
mm,
message can I give these devotees, pretty much all of whom have lost friends, family members, homes. All of them are completely traumatized by the terrible war
mm,
that's going on and things. And here I am, I'm going to come in and start speaking about Bhagavad Gita and Tam Satiksha Bharata, you should just tolerate this and that. And it just felt so wrong to me. I just couldn't do it. But instead, I told them, I said, I've thought about why I'm here. And I
mm,
want to tell you, I'm not here to preach to you. I'm not here to tell you this thing or that, but I'm here
mm.
to share your pain. And because
Yeah.
you're my heroes, because all
Mm,
of you are still practicing bhakti in spite of all the terrible things you've been through. And I'm here to
mm.
serve you by sharing some things, some Hari Katha things. I'll share that with you, but you're my heroes. I'm not here to preach to you. I'm here to share and experience the pain that you're
Yeah.
experiencing. So for me, when we find devotees who have been abused, and there are quite a few, and I
Yeah.
strongly think, just to put a little note in, that we need to have more trauma treatment in our society, psychological
Mhm,
treatment done by
mhm,
qualified devotees for
mhm,
devotees who have PTSD, who've been abused, and not just giving this crap to them, coming in and saying, Prabhu, this is your karma and you have to
10 more
tolerate it and
rounds.
things, which is, it's
Yeah.
more violence. And
Yes.
it's so very wrong.
Yes.
There needs to be proper treatment for that in our society, in our Vaishnav society. So much. And
True.
I always stress Vaishnav society, not just ISKCON, but our broad Gaudiya
Yeah.
Vaishnav family.
Yeah. Beautiful. Thank you. Totally agree with. I mean, we may not have professional skills to accompany them, but at least, as you say, we can share their pain, be empathic, be present, be willing to learn, to listen, to receive. Maybe we may not need to say too much, but just being there for them and yeah, emphasizing the need for professional accompanying. Today we were talking with some. Her name is Krishna Lila. She's from Argentina but lives in the U.S. a devotee, and she's 84. She's a psychologist and specialized in trauma therapy, and she's helping many devotees in this department. And she was telling me there's so many traumatized devotees, PTSD is all around.
Yes, I've heard her name several times.
Mm-hmm.
I've been getting into this a little more about this PTSD treatment. It's
Mm.
very important. But
Yeah.
there's non-devotees doing it, and sometimes if you go to the non-devotees who are doing this kind of thing, and they hear that you're a vegetarian and you're following four regulated principles, then because of their mindset, even though they may be a professional, they'll say, no, 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 you should don't follow these kind of principles. This is crazy, and they can't understand it. But it's really good when we have devotees like Krishna Lila and like others who are professionals who understand the principles of Vaishnavism, and
Mm-hmm.
also who's a professional person who understands this
Mm.
psychological principles of trauma and healing that, and combine both and can respect devotees' needs. It's really needed.
Madhavananda Prabhu, if you could leave our listeners with one insight, not just about Guru Tattva, religious PTSD, tough love of pastoral abuse, but whatever you may like, how to navigate spiritual path in general, whatever comes to your heart, what will it be today?
I think we should always understand and be introspective and understand where I'm at. And where I'm at is not where you're at, where he's at, or where she's at. I need to understand what's for me and try to follow that. And maybe I'm just a 2-year-old baby. And maybe I need someone telling me what I can drink and what I can't drink and what I can have and what I can't have. And that's okay. There's nothing wrong with being a 2-year-old baby. It's better than trying to imitate an adult and making the wrong decision and killing yourself. But at the
Mhm.
same time, you may be a 2-year-old child, you want to grow up. And growing up means that we have to do the hard work to be independent thinkers. And that's going to apply for us in our business, in our social life, in our marriages, in our dealing with the institution, our dealing with Guru, our dealing with Krishna. We have to be independent thinkers. That's what bhakti is all about. It's supreme personalism. That's my thought, Maharaj. Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate your radical personalism. Thank you for
Mhm.
that.
Thanks so much for your presence and the gift of your existence to me and to many, so many more of us. So thanks so much for coming.